From game day to signing day, breaking down every snap and all the news on Alabama's top football recruits. It's time for Crimson and Blue Chips with your host, John Garcia Jr.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in to a fresh and free Friday edition of Crimson and Blue Chips. I'm your host, John Garcia Jr., and we've got a great show planned for you today. First of all, it is August 3rd. That means fall camp at the University of Alabama has officially begun. Big day on the calendar, literally the beginning and the foundation of the 2018 season. So no more off-season talk, no more build-up talk. It is actually here. Position battles going down immediately. Emergers beginning to emerge, beginning today, immediately. So everything we look forward to in a long off-season has officially come to a regrettable and merciless end here for the 2018 season. So we're really excited. Obviously, it's a big time of year. We'll be talking so very much about the 2018 season, fall camp at Alabama. Nick Saban, Jalen Hurts, Tua Tagovailoa. They're replacing the secondary. Mac Wilson, can he step up? The defensive line, O-line, how do you fit the 5 best linemen in there? All of that is going to be hot and heavy over the next several weeks. However, we still kind of want to play in the middle today. A little bit of recruiting, a little bit of team. And for recruiting, we're going to go to a guy who can help us with both, essentially. Paul Tyson, 4-star quarterback, committed to the University of Alabama, will join us once again. He'll preview his senior season as he gears up at Hewitt-Trussville, talk recruiting others, talk his recruitment, and give his take on the quarterback situation at Alabama. So a fresh and free Friday edition of Crimson and Blue Chips kicking off right now. Making a return to Crimson and Blue Chips, friend of the program, a guy we've gotten to literally see grow here over the last few years, but now he's headed into his senior season. It's 4-star quarterback and Alabama commitment, Paul Tyson out of Hewitt-Trussville High School. Paul, we've had you on a bunch, but now you're officially a senior. It's August. It's football season, man. How you feeling?
I feel great. I can't wait to get into the season.
Yeah, give the listeners kind of your schedule, your plan. I think most people who listen to this show know Alabama begins camp August 3rd, but at Hewitt-Trussville, a premier school, 7A ball, outside of Birmingham. When do you guys really get going, and what's kind of camp like for you guys under Josh Floyd?
So we'll be starting on August 5th August 6th, on a Monday, and we'll start school 2 days later. So basically, we just go every day after school for about 2 to 3 hours and working out in the morning and watching film. So we'll go every day really until the season starts, except on the weekends, and really just getting ready in pads, getting some hitting down, and just being ready for the season all around.
You know, for you, Paul, this is a unique time. You know, last year at this time, I think everybody kind of knew you were going to be the guy at Hewitt-Trussville, but you know, you still had to go out there and prove it and get all of that under your belt, being there for the first time. But now, for the first time, you're a second-year returning varsity starting quarterback. So what's different beyond that? What makes it different? What's the feel, I guess, this year compared to heading into fall camp 2017?
Right, yes, sir. It definitely helps having 1 year behind my belt and to have the trust from my teammates and my coaches to rely on me and that I can help through the offense more, and coaches rely on me for play calls too sometimes, and then with my players for them to look up to me sometimes and really just be more comfortable in the offense all around. It helps having 1 more year and to be just more comfortable playing the game and everything in every different aspect.
You know, you mentioned calling your own plays there. Is that more audibling or calling two plays and checking one at the line of scrimmage? What's the Paul Tyson playbook looking like? When do you kind of force your hand and make those changes?
Really, it's coach telling us what he wants and me putting the guys in the positions and in the plays and everything. And a lot of times it's a simple signal he'll give me, and then I got to put everyone in position to and give the line their protection and the receiver their routes to make the best play for them.
Yeah, speaking of putting guys in position, your receiving core, I think we can probably say is the best in the state, at least in terms of what we know right now, right? And what we know of pure talent.
Right.
Most Bama fans, again, listening to this show, very familiar with Zaylen Worsham. He's committed to Alabama, a 4-star just like you. But the guy that Bama fans probably don't know about that they should, certainly in years to come, but even right now, since you're throwing to him, is Javarius Johnson, the Auburn commitment. Again, Bama fans might not want to hear it, but this kid has had an unbelievable offseason, committed to Auburn, and he's one of your top targets now as well. Would you be comfortable comparing the two, or if anything, just kind of introducing people to what makes Javarius Johnson a guy who, you're going to get the ball to this year?
Right, no doubt. Both are very, very good receivers that are held to high standards, like you said, and they believe, and as well as I, that they're very talented guys that probably are the best in the state, and that they would say, and just the receiving core all around it, trustful, we think. And then, both two different type of receivers. The Zaylen's more the taller one that's going to go up and get it. Both very fast and athletic. Javarius is probably a little faster on the outside, and both are outside receivers that really just make plays for us. Are always going to get the job done, and it really, really helps me just to be able to get the ball out of my hands and give it to these playmakers that are really going to do something special with the ball. It makes the job a lot easier on me.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are going to expect you guys to score a lot of points just like last year. You get a new receiver in Johnson. You got Worsham back another year up front, obviously 5-star composite prospect Pierce Quick leading that charge. And then you get a new running back as well, another guy that we talk about a little bit, but we'd like you to kind of shed more light on, Armani Goodwin. There's multiple backs who are going to be used. We know how you guys operate. You got several good ones. I like Robinson a lot personally, but Goodwin's kind of the new toy. Had a huge freshman year last year, so just in the class of 2021. What makes him a guy who again, like Johnson, you're going to make it a point to get him some touches?
Right, just like you said. He's a young guy that really only played half a year of varsity football, and he's going into his 10th grade year. But he's really a special player now, and just like I said earlier, we just are wanting to get the ball in playmakers' hands, and he's one that's definitely a playmaker that has speed and can jump through the roof and can catch the ball too. So he'll be just very versatile for us, and so we're just going to get the ball in his hands as much as possible and let him do his thing.
So you see him kind of setting you up for a little bit of tough journalism here, Paul. With all of these weapons and this offense at Hewitt, and again, we all know how tough this region's going to be with the realignment of 7A, meaning you got Hoover, you got Thompson, etc., all in the region. That said, what are the goals for you? Is there a number out there, yardage-wise, touchdowns-wise? What are the Paul Tyson goals? How do you kind of set them up going into the final ride at the high school level?
For goals for me, it's all about a team goal more than personal, because I want to lead our team to a state championship and get us a chance to at least get there no matter what. And statistics will come along the way. That doesn't affect me very much what the statistics say, as long as your team wins. That's the most important thing for us. And I think athletically, we definitely have a team that can make it to the state championship and go and make a huge run and go all the way. But we're getting everything together, and honestly just trusting our coaching staff and believing in them, and we really think this thing's going to be great this year.
What a quarterback answer that was. You couldn't just go out there and make my day and say, I want to throw for 50 touchdowns this year. I got you. No, I got you. I understand. And like you said, you guys do have that type of talent. Again, going into your senior year, what do you get better at? Just because you have familiarity and weapons doesn't mean it's just going to come to you. So what does Paul Tyson need to work on at camp in the next few weeks ahead of that first game, which is even though you're not playing against Hoover or Thompson, it's no slouch playing Cedar Grove out of Georgia with a couple of blue chip recruits over there as well.
Right, for sure. I mean, just over fall camp or over the whole spring and off season was working on my feet and more just mobility, and definitely have gotten a lot faster and just speed wise and getting outside the pocket and throwing the ball better. But in fall camp, I still want to work on my feet and just drop backs and staying in the pocket and outside, just making good throws as well as just keeping my feet settled and not hurting myself too much.
Very good. You know, one of those guys on Cedar Grove's defensive line who will theoretically be trying to sack you for 4 quarters is your future teammate, Rashad Cheney, the defensive lineman from Cedar Grove. What kind of relationship do you guys have, and how does that work going into a game against one another at the high school level, knowing that, you know, for the 4+ years after that, you're at least at this point, you're going to be teammates considering you're both committed to Alabama?
Right, and me and Rashad actually committed on the same day, so that was something cool we, I guess, had in common. So we got to talk and meet that day and just get a relationship started. And over time, he's came down to Alabama a couple weekends with me, been in Tuscaloosa, and we've just gotten to hang out and enjoy each other's company. And actually went through camp together at Alabama, so that was fun, just getting to see the talent I guess both of us had, and really it's just been able to grow over time. And we know we're all friends right now, but come game time, we're definitely going to be fighting for that W.
So if he comes off, unblocked, let's say, and smacks you in the face, big sack, a woo play, everybody in the stands is kind of oohing and on. Does Nick Saban make a phone call? Like, what happens? You know, we don't see this. Well, my point is we don't see this very much. So what happens at that point, in your opinion? You know, you have a black jersey on at Alabama saying, "Hey, don't hit me," but obviously not on Friday nights. But is there, what happens when that happens? Are you cool with that?
I mean, I'm cool with it because trust me, I know he's gonna be going twice as hard after me than probably any other guy this season because he wants to. He knows he doesn't have a chance in fall camp. He wants to go ahead and get it over with now in the game. But I mean, honestly, it really wouldn't me. It wouldn't affect me at all. I would just keep playing, and it'd just be something funny to laugh at, I guess.
Yeah, I guess this is his last chance to actually tackle you to the ground. So that'll be something. I believe August 25th is that game. So we are literally in game month, and there's not much better than that in terms of the long off season that lies in between football seasons. But of course, as we've talked about, committed to Alabama for quite some time. You did commit on the same day as Rashad. Just what's it been like, Paul? I know. We can talk about you recruiting other guys. We could talk about your team and having many Alabama commitments. But just for you, as life as an Alabama commitment goes on, how has it changed? What is it like compared to maybe before you committed or that moment where you actually did go public with that decision?
It's been really great, honestly, just to be able to relax. And yes, the recruiting process is great and fun and everything, but once senior season rolls around for a quarterback, I think it's honestly just time to make your decision. I think I made a good timing of when I did it to be able to focus on spring practice and just give my team all the really just all my time and energy because I want to be all in for Trustful for right now because Alabama's 100% where I'm going, 100% where I want to be, but I want to go ahead and just give my high school some time. That's why I did it so early, but honestly thought it was a great thing to do, and it's been great so far, and I've really enjoyed it.
I don't know if you'll feel comfortable with me asking you this, but I'll ask it anyway. Like you said, you're 100% going to Alabama, so I think we can. Who finished second? Because I think my gut tells me it was a certain school, but was there a school who was second to Alabama who you thought at one point, hey, this is where Paul Tyson might want to play ball?
I mean, really, to be honest, there wasn't really a second one. I know right before I committed, I visited a few schools. I visited Kentucky, LSU, and Michigan. The few weeks before I committed to Alabama, those kind of the four I visited right before I was deciding. And Alabama was just, it's just Alabama. It's a place where it felt like home and really where I wanted to be. So that's what kind of led me towards that, I guess. And it just was obvious.
You're hard to trick, man. There's so much quarterback in you that I can't get you to say number 2 was Michigan, and I hope we play them in a bowl game one day. prove that I made the right decision. We're gonna leave. We're gonna stay away from Big Ten talk after the last few days here in the college football world. But sticking to Bama and recruiting, Paul, obviously Champions Cookout 2.0 was kind of the last recruiting event of the offseason, of the summer. You were there again. We had Pierce on the show, I think last week or 2 weeks ago, and we asked him what in the world goes on at these events, because we really don't know. Is it just eating and hanging out with the coaches? But what really does go on for you, for the quarterback, at an event like this, and what was kind of your role on that Saturday?
Really, my role that the coaches give me is, of course, just getting to spend more time with them is but I've been down there so many times, just already have a great relationship built. But honestly, more just getting a better relationship built with the recruits. We've had 2 of these cookouts so far, and guys that have committed have come by, and guys that we really want that are close have came by, and really just talking to them and enjoying time with them, eating, playing games, just wanted to build better relationships and just show them that why Alabama should be their home.
Who was? Was there again? It's an invite-only event and things like that with this cookout. But was there priority one for you individually? Was it one guy, or was it kind of evenly distributing your time if you could and put it in guys' ear?
Mostly evenly distributing my time, but kind of some guys that you want to look at that are some big time players that we really want, like Clay Webb, Darnell Wright, Kayvon Thibodeau. They want us guys that we can talk to that definitely are close and we think we can make a run at them.
I got you. What was the difference between Champions Cookout 1 and Champions Cookout 2, if anything?
I think there was a pretty good bit of more people at the first cookout, just from around areas nationwide. It was more the closer range people at the second, and more commit to the second one, but really not too much different. It was the same type of style, wanting to meet people if you haven't met them before, or build better relationships.
Who was that guy for you? Was there another recruit, or even a parent, or anybody or even a commit, I guess, who you hadn't really met that you wanted to spend some time with just because you hadn't previously?
I guess I would say the 2 that I mainly focused on. The first one was Kayvon Thibodeau. I'd hung out with him one time before, but really got to build a better relationship with him because he's coming from California. Doesn't get to come up here often. And the second one was Darnell Wright, and he's from up north. So that's the second cookout I went to. And yes, I'd hung out with him one time before, but as well, it's the same thing. He doesn't get to come out here often, so getting to be with him and hang out with him was a lot of fun.
Who do you feel better about right now? Gun to your head. Who do you feel better about Alabama getting? Kayvon Thibodeau, Darnell Wright. Which 5-star?
Don't
give me a quarterback answer.
All right. I'll say Darnell Wright, because I think I have just being the offensive tackle and quarterback. There's just a special little relationship, I think, and with Pierce helping too, with him being an offensive tackle. And that's the only reason I'm saying that is because he's on the offensive side of the ball. Because I promise I think both are close.
Well, I'm sure Bama fans would love to hear that. I try to get you on that one. Who's a better recruiter, Paul Tyson or Pierce Quick?
I really can't answer that question because Pierce, it's probably Pierce. Pierce is the one that taught me everything. He'd been committed a whole year before, and I try to use the same style as him. But Pierce is the man. He's the first one committed 5-star. Like that's my boy. He started everything here at Alabama. So it's my job to just come here and back him up. Come here with him and in the recruiting class and back him up with what he says and everything. And we're both gonna recruit real hard and just do what's best for Alabama.
Pierce would appreciate this because he's a friend of the program as well. Did his recruiting of you get annoying at any point? Because obviously, look, he's your tackle, right? So you're with him so often. You guys went on vacation together at one point. Did it ever border or get to the annoying phase?
I wouldn't say the annoying stage, but there was times where I would go on a visit and he would just be like, "Dude, come on, don't even waste your time. Like, just go ahead and commit." And I'm like, man, I had to at least like visit schools and keep open-minded and look out because I was trying to be open-minded throughout the whole process and check out other options to see what was the best fit for me. And of course, it ended up being Alabama. But I mean, he did want me to just not even take any visits.
I love it. That's hilarious. Now, going back to the cookout and kind of just your recruiting in general, I know one of the big kind of checkpoints for you before you picked Alabama and really as you looked at every school was the offensive coordinator, kind of the direction of the offense, obviously things like that, quarterback's coach. And at Alabama, it was kind of unique because there was so much transition with the coaching staff. Mike Locksley, the new offensive coordinator, Josh Gaddis, co-offensive coordinator, and for the first time under Nick Saban, a quarterback's coach who isn't the offensive coordinator in Dan Enos. How much kind of background did you have to do on those guys before you were comfortable committing, and what has it been like since then as you have gone back to Tuscaloosa and been able to sit down and see what these guys are about?
Yeah, I mean, it really did not take much time at all. I think within 2 visits, I was really within one. The first visit, I was all in with what they were talking about and loved it. And I think the second visit they were there, I went ahead and committed. And of course, you wanted to at least get a good relationship and with Coach Enos being going to be my coach, and so that was good to at least get to hang with him some before. I wanted to make sure I made the right decision, and just since then they've been just more than anything I expected. Just how great they've been in the offense that they're running, and just everything. It's just falling right into pieces for what I've wanted.
I know you probably can't give too much away because we don't know yet, literally, because this is all new for Alabama. But how do you see the offense this year? Because the last 2 years, pretty distinctly different with Lane Kiffin as the OC and then Brian Dable as the OC. Now it's Locksley with some Enos and some Gaddis influence. How do you see it kind of running and operating this year, maybe versus what we've seen the last 2 years?
Right. I mean, honestly, it could go any way just depending on the quarterback style. So it's really a hard question for me to answer. But, I mean, they're very versatile and with passing, running, just all around, just a great offense the way it's looking. And they're going to fit the style that best fits everyone on the field.
Well, I was going to ask you about the quarterback situation anyway, because it's been the most talked about topic in leading up to this camp beginning August 3rd. Jalen versus Tua, Tua versus Jalen. I know they're friends. I know they all have their moments, but how do you see it playing out? You're someone who certainly knows Jalen and Tua better than I do, and certainly knows the coaches much better than I do or than most of our listeners do. So how do you kind of envision the battle going? Could there be a 2-quarterback system? What's your kind of standpoint, at least in heading into fall camp with that all-important position?
I mean, yes, quarterback is an important position, and I could see them doing either one if they wanted to go 1 or going 2. I mean, that's completely up to the coaching staff. I could, I mean, and they don't, I guess, give us insight much at all. I don't know much about it, but I know that they're both great quarterbacks, and no matter what happens, that I think Alabama's going to be successful, and I really think both are going to support each other because I know they're great friends, and there's just a great relationship in the quarterback room with the coach and the players. And so, I mean, whatever happens, and I think both are going to be okay with it. And I'm not sure what happens if they play 2, play 1, or what's the deal. But I think no matter what happens, it's going to be good with both of them.
Is there a prediction? Do you think in your eyes, is there a favorite right now? Because Las Vegas says Tua, maybe precedent says Jalen. But what do you say in terms of just going into it, handicapping the race if you have to? Who do you think has a better shot, just slightly over the other, if it's that close?
I mean, to be honest, I couldn't even tell you. I've been to practice camp of who has a slight edge, but I know both quarterbacks are top notch and some of the best in the country, and it's crazy that both are at the same school fighting for the same job, and. But I mean, I really couldn't tell you if one had a slight edge or not.
So you've obviously seen them practice and play a bunch, and I would assume have thrown very close to them. Has Jalen progressed as a passer? Because the assumption is that they're fairly close in a lot of categories, but Jalen is the better runner. Tua is the better thrower. That's the general perception. Is there that much separation in their arms from where you sit? Again, having seen them much more closely than most.
Um, Back in actually June 1st through 3rd, I went to Elite 11 and actually was paired with Jalen in my group and throwing next to him, and he taught me many different things and styles throwing the ball. He threw the ball real well and just helped me grow as a passer. So I mean, I know that he can throw the ball well just from seeing him, watching him throw, and I don't think that many people could say he can't throw well or anything like that. I think Jalen has a really good arm.
There he is, the quarterback recruit for your Alabama Crimson Tide, Paul Tyson, joining us once again here at Crimson and Blue Chips. Of course, we thank you for rejoining us. We wish you all health and success in 2018. I'll probably be around at some point in fall camp, so I'll certainly be bugging you again here shortly.
Sounds good.
Want to thank Paul Tyson for rejoining Crimson and Blue Chips. A lot of valuable information there, and you guys saw I tried to crack him a few times. Him being a quarterback, though, pretty tough. So pretty down the middle on some topics, but you did get some really good insight into his recruiting process in terms of the new coaches on offense at Alabama. Dan Enos, Mike Loxley, even Josh Gaddis to some degree. And then you got a sense of what he's working with at Hewitt Trustful. Some of the targets there, you saw some video of those guys simultaneously if you're watching us on YouTube, and if you are, please subscribe. And then you got kind of the pitch and the behind the scenes a little bit with Paul and how he recruits other guys. Interesting that Kayvon Thibodeau, Darnell Wright, 2 5-stars, are the guys he feels good about, are the guys he's been focusing on. One on the West Coast, one in West Virginia. You know, that's another example of Alabama recruiting, how strong it is, how national it is, what have you. So good stuff, as always, from Paul Tyson. On the recruiting note, speaking of that, as you went from Thursday night to Friday morning, and we record here on CABC, Bama actually fell from number 1. Everybody freak out. Bama is number 2 in the recruiting rankings. Georgia picked up another 5-star commitment. Nobody else has more than 2 24/7 Sports composite 5-stars. Georgia has 5, so almost triple the amount of anybody else at this early juncture. Of course, it is August 3rd. Very long way to go. And I think Alabama has several more spots on their commitment list to overtake Georgia. And I still think it's very possible, should the Crimson Tide finish how the Crimson Tide typically finishes. However, if I'm going to sit here and say that I'm not surprised Georgia's number 1, I would be lying to you. I didn't think they would land some of these guys. They've outkicked their coverage, if you will, at least from my opinion, in recruiting. I didn't think they had a shot at John Emery. I didn't think Trevon Walker would be so highly regarded when he did eventually pop for UGA. But the Bulldogs are rolling. There's really no other way to put it. The Bulldogs are absolutely on fire on the recruiting trail right now, and they're not done. They're not done either, in-state or otherwise. So something to keep an eye on. Bama all the way down to number 2 in the recruiting rankings. But we thank Paul Tyson. Obviously, some of those targets that he mentioned can help vault Alabama right back over the Bulldogs. So we'll keep an eye on that as the season begins. But as you can see on our lovely screencast here, it's time for Q&A. And it's time to begin that process via Instagram. Dayton Chapman going to start us off with a series of questions via Instagram, CABC Pod on Instagram, if you're on that social media. He wants to begin with Robbie Ashford, class of 2020. Speaking of in-state quarterbacks from Birmingham, do you think quarterback Robbie Ashford will end up at Alabama? Very simple, but a good question. Look, this is arguably, and we're going to find out here in the next few weeks, arguably the top quarterback in Alabama for 2020, the top overall prospect in Alabama for 2020. That's how good he can be. Some people think he's Justin Fields 2.0. The only difference is that Justin Fields was already starting at Harrison High School by this point. Robbie just ascended to that. at Hoover High School. So we'll see it very shortly here in the next few weeks. Hoover, Pinson Valley, first game of the year, ESPN. I mean, strap it up. We'll find out real quick if Robbie Ashford has the makings of the guy we think he can be. What benefits him, he's got 2 full years of high school left. He hasn't started a varsity game, but obviously by the end of the day, he may have started 20 plus by the time he signs with a school. Now, in terms of Alabama, it hasn't offered yet, but Alabama's extremely familiar with Robbie. Again, for those who don't know, 6'4", 6'3 and a half, 200 pounds right now, coming off of an injury. So he's going to fill out much more. I think he's a guy who's 6'4", 215 when he signs one day, 6'4", 220, which sounds a lot like Justin Fields. Good athlete, baseball player, which also brings in the Justin Fields comparison. And again, so the biggest difference is we know he has a big arm. We know he's a great athlete, but we just hadn't seen it at the varsity level just yet. So we'll have to wait and see if that continues like we think it could. And if so, I think Alabama eventually offers him a scholarship. But Robbie's got a bevy of offers already. Georgia has offered. Auburn has offered. Clemson seems close to offering. Florida has offered. I mean, he's got a heavy list already. But the good news for Alabama here, he doesn't appear to be in a rush to make a decision. His entire focus over the last few weeks, getting healthy and beginning this camp at Hoover High School. So that's big news for Alabama. I think the timing there helps. And look, if he's great in the first few weeks and he starts to show all of those tools and matures some, boom, he's probably going to get that Alabama offer. But what's interesting about it is Bama's got a commitment already, Carson Beck, in the class of 2020 at quarterback. So you wonder if they're already thinking about taking multiple quarterbacks like we saw them do a couple of years ago with Tua Tagovailoa and Mac Jones in that class of 2017. I think it's very possible, especially if there's some attrition in this class of or in this season, 2018, 2019, etc., all of which would go down before Ashford would begin his career at the University of Alabama or anywhere else for that matter. He was at the Champions Cookout 2.0 last weekend. Mom, Melanie Ashford, did come along with. Robbie grew up a Bama fan. He doesn't really try to hide that very much. So I think should he do what we think he can do, and I think he's going to end up as the top prospect in the state for 2020, should he do all of those things to stamp that and validate that and verify that, I do think Bama offers, and I do think Bama becomes an immediate contender, and I don't think there's going to be a penalty or an ill will from the Ashford camp towards Alabama for him getting offered later than some other schools are willing to do. I think Clemson could eventually offer him, become a major player. I think he could be a national kid, top 100 type of guy in that class. So with Robbie, I think a lot of schools are saying, hey, show us on Friday nights. And I think obviously he's got to wait till August 25th to do that. And he's got a great defense and a great team defending state champions to kick it off with on national television. So a lot of college quarterbacks, offensive coordinators will be watching Robbie when that happens. So we'll see. We'll see how he plays in the first few weeks, and if Bama offers, I think it becomes a major player. And if he's patient with the process there, I think it's got a good shot to land Robbie, assuming it takes multiple quarterbacks in that class. Second question coming in, where does Bama stand with defensive tackle Jaquez Sorrells? Where does he rank among other DTs on the Bama board? Question coming in from Dayton Chapman there. Jaquez Sorrells, a guy we hadn't talked about a lot here, a guy I really like out of Florida. He's out of Largo High School, just north of Tampa. Great prospect, 4-star guy, probably about 6'3", 275, 280 right now. We've seen him multiple times, or I've seen him multiple times this offseason in camp settings. We saw him in full gear at the opening finals, and he did really well. He was a guy who was in the conversation for top 5 type of D lineman at the opening, and anybody in that conversation is a legitimate prospect. What I like about him is that he seems to be a combo guy. He can play inside, he can play outside. He seems comfortable against guards or tackles, physical at the point of attack, quick enough in short spaces, good hands, good technique already, although he can still use some work there. You like to see him disengage better. He was kind of boom or bust a little bit at the opening. He would either dominate a rep, toss a guard, and get in the backfield in a second or two, or he would get latched onto and kind of get washed away, as they say, with some of the reps there. So you want to see a little bit more consistency out of him, but for where he is as a junior, with his body, athleticism, he doesn't have bad weight on him. There's a lot to like about Jaquez Soros, and that's why a lot of schools coast to coast are in on him. I think Oregon's probably the favorite right now. The in-state schools have kind of cooled on him, whether it be Florida, Florida State, Miami. So there is a sense that he will leave the state of Florida. So that could be good news for Alabama, depending on where he does sit on the board. I think there's not a ton of room at defensive tackle. There's a lot of bubble guys, right? I think we can all agree Ishmael Sopsher's the top dog, the top target out there for Alabama. I think he could commit right now. I think Leal, the Texas A&M verbal commitment, can commit right now. I think after that, it becomes one of those sit-down situations for Alabama. All the coaches got to sit down and say, hey, do we want to take this kid at this moment? I think Sorrells is on that list like that. I think Fa'atui Tuitele is on the list like that. I think Siaki Ika is on the list like that. I think there's going to be a question of numbers and space because there's a lot of D linemen already committed to Alabama. When you think about Kevin Harris and Justin Aboigbe, Rashad Cheney, DJ Dale, Antonio Alfano, who's been on the show here recently, a lot of D linemen already pledged to Alabama. So how much room is there for interior guys, especially interior guys not named Sopsher and not named Leal? I just don't know that answer just yet, but I do know that Sorrells has ascended to some degree. He's played his best football most recently. So he's answering more questions than creating more questions, if that makes sense. And I think that is good news for Alabama. And heck, look, the cookout that he went to last weekend, Champions Cookout 2.0, invite-only event. So if you're there and you show up, you were invited to do so. I assume he brought his family and things like that. So we'll see. We'll see if Bama can catch a school like Oregon, maybe South Carolina, schools that are perceived to be in really good shape for Jaquez. I think it could be a matter of if Bama wants this kid, they get him. If they don't, they don't. Final question coming in via Instagram from Dayton Chapman, and we appreciate you asking. What position do you see Reggie Grimes playing in college? This is an Alabama legacy, a versatile prospect. I'm unsure here, to be honest with you. I'm not incredibly familiar with him. I know our buddies at Bama Online, Hank South, have written about him. But look, Bama legacy prospect, holds a scholarship offer, holds Alabama in high regard. So he could be one of those guys, and forgive my ignorance here, he could be one of those guys you get on campus and you just figure it out after that point. We talk about, Slade Bolden in this class of 2018, Cyrus Jones coming out of high school, Trevon Diggs coming out of high school. These were guys where you knew they could play multiple positions and probably excel at multiple positions, but you just kind of brought them in, moved them around, experimented a little bit, and eventually they kind of figured themselves out. Even Minka Fitzpatrick, Eddie Jackson, guys who flirted between corner and safety. It even applies to guys like them. And Alabama has never been shy about moving a guy around. Slade Bolden, running back, receiver, running back. I think Jerome Ford could have some of that from this class of 2018. We see it with linemen all the time. So Bama loves versatile prospects. They love those tweener guys who don't necessarily have a position. Look at the commitment list right now. You see a couple of those types with Christian Williams, with Rashad Cheney, and I think Reggie Grimes could eventually become that. But he's got a little bit of a ways to go in the recruiting process, so we'll have to wait and see there. But hey, Bama legacy with an offer. Who again, another guy who was on campus for the cookout. You just never know. Let's go to Twitter for our next sets of questions coming in. Luke Ferguson coming in saying, let's talk depth chart. Coach, not player depth chart. If the current DC and OC leave, who on staff is next up? Wow. Hashtag 3pods, hashtag thank you. Hashtag you're welcome, Luke. Really excited to come at you 3 times a week. In case you missed our announcement on Tuesday, yes, 3 shows a week right now, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So certainly stay tuned for that upcoming next week. Will be our first full week of 3 shows a week. So we're extremely excited about that here at CABC. Coming at you on YouTube. We're working on SoundCloud, and we're still working very hard to get back on iTunes as well. So still on 24/7 Sports, still all the same social media channels. So keep it locked there. Any developments with those additional apps, SoundCloud and iTunes in particular. We will keep you posted there. And again, we are spending a lot of man hours trying to remedy that situation. But thank you for the kind words, Luke. So coaching depth chart, if the OC and DC leave, well, the interesting thing already with that question is that there's co-DCs right now, but we can all agree that it's kind of one guy and then the other guy, right? On offense, it's Mike Locksley, then it's Josh Gaddis. Dan Enos is mixed in at some point as well. And then on defense, Tosh Lupoy, then Pete Golding, with a ton of Nick Saban mixed in there as well. But we're assuming Tosh Lupoy and Mike Locksley leave. Who is next up? Is it easy to say, hey, those co-DCs just step up and they assume that role exclusively? I think that's easy to say, but Nick Saban has shown us many times that that's not necessarily how he operates. He's going to go out and try to get the best. So if Tosh Lupoy gets some West Coast head coaching gig and Mike Locksley gets returns to the head coaching ranks, let's say next season after 15-0 type of ride, who steps up? I think if you're talking current roster, the natural answers would be Josh Gaddis and Pete Golding. But I think on offense, Dan Enos would probably be more likely of a candidate. He's already called plays, more established. And if Alabama does go 15-0 and they're good enough to send these coaches off to new head coaching positions, it would have meant Dan Enos did a really good job managing multiple really good quarterbacks, figuring out a way to use both or manage both, if you will. We don't know exactly how that's going to play out. So I think he would actually kind of have first dibs on the OC job. I think at defensive coordinator, be a little more simple. Pete Golding's already called plays. He's a high-level recruiter. He's going to have an influence in that this year as co-DC. I think he would kind of step up if we're talking just internally. But we know Nick Saban cares not about the internal promotion, the PR promotion of bumping up a guy who's already been on staff. Nick's going to go out and try to get the best guys he can, and I think that would hold true if both of these coaches moved on. But internally, I think Enos would have the best shot on offense, and Golding probably on defense. But good question. I think that's something that, unfortunately, as an Alabama fan, you guys have dealt with that a lot. So that hypothetical, even though it's year one for a lot of these guys, is not truly out of the question. So smart one there from friend of the show, Luke Ferguson. Carl Lensner chiming in with some questions. Good afternoon, John. Right now, Alabama has 6 defensive line commits. I assume Rashad Cheney will not be in the class at the end. So that leaves Alabama with 5. How many more defensive linemen will Alabama take? P.S. Does Thibodeau count as a defensive lineman? Thanks for answering my questions. Okay. Will Rashad Cheney decommit? I don't know. If there was a lineman currently committed on either side of the ball, I would pick, if there was a gray shirt or, change, I would think Tanner Bowles most likely on offense, Rashad Cheney most likely on defense, but I also don't think Alabama's there yet. I can't speak for Rashad or Tanner from their perspective, but you never know. If the numbers get tight and a kid is asked to gray shirt, anything can happen. We've seen kids accept it, like Hunter Brandon, like Jerez Parks, like Bradley Bozeman many years ago. And we've seen kids say, gray shirt, man, I thought I was on scholarship. I'm out. Like Riley Cole a few years, a linebacker who ended up at South Alabama. So there's precedent on both sides here, depending on how that arises. That's what's hard to do as a head coach and a coaching staff, managing that, knowing that it's a possibility. If on offensive line, if Bama gets Darnell Wright and Evan Neal, let's say, and what about Clay Webb? So you're not going to say no to him. So you wonder if all 3 of those guys are ready to roll Tide, what happens to one of the guys who's on the bubble? That's tough. That's tough in recruiting, but Alabama's had to navigate that before, and obviously it's a good problem to have because it means you're getting elite players. So if that happened on the D line, so Ishmael Sopsher jumps in, and Kayvon Thibodeau is ready to jump in, and maybe you flip Leal from Texas A&M. Yeah, who do you say no to out of those 3? I don't think you say no to any of them. So what does that mean for the numbers? Rashad Cheney, according to you, Carl, is kind of that odd man out in theory. So I don't know. I don't know how that would work. It's really one of those that you never know how a kid's going to respond to it until it happens. So It's a little early for that, I think, but it's certainly a possibility with Alabama's track record of recruiting. So your question is how many spots will be left on the D line? I think we touched on this a little bit earlier with the Instagram question. It's kind of unknown. I think two, 2 to 3 at the most. Look, there's 20 commits right now. The numbers we hear for this class range from 25 to 28. If you take another D lineman or two, I mean, you're still waiting on an inside linebacker, which got a little more complicated with Christian Harris committing to Texas A&M this week. You still need space for that. You need space for multiple defensive backs, perhaps one corner, one safety, maybe Tyreek Stevenson and Daxton Hill, something like that. Would be a great combo for Alabama, or maybe Jalen McCullough out of Georgia. So you need space there. You're looking at another receiver to bring in, so there's space there. We just talked about the O-lineman. There's maybe 2 to 3 spaces there. So where are you getting this extra space for another D lineman? So it's really hard. It's going to be very numbers crunchy there at the end for Alabama. But I think 2's the safe bet. I think Bama wants at least 2 more defensive linemen if you include Thibodeaux. So 1 more edge rusher, 1 more interior guy. But if there's another space, I think it would take another interior guy or hand in the dirt type of guy in this class of 19. But we'll see. We'll see about that one. Another couple of questions coming in. One via Ricky the Great, who's been with us for a very long time here. We retweeted, for those who don't know, and you could see it here on the on the simulcast. We quote tweeted a pretty interesting scoop from Blair Angulo, who's been on the podcast. He posted at Bama Online. I'm not going to give the whole thing away, but it does involve a former 5-star prospect who Alabama was very much in it for, who ended up elsewhere. He has returned home, and there is chatter that he has been asked for a release. Now, in this climate of immediate eligibility, it seems like the NCAA is granting everybody immediate eligibility. So should this kid want to go to Alabama and get permission to go to Alabama, what could it do? So Ricky's question is, what do you think about possibly adding this late addition? And what would that mean for the 2019 linebacker core, or even 2018 if he can be eligible? Thanks. Been a long time. Yeah, Ricky, you talk about Bama not saying no to a kid. This is a kid that we penciled into Bama multiple times in the class of 2018. I'm not going to give his name away with respect to our premium VIP services at 24/7 Sports. Again, hit Bama Online. I think you could put 2 and 2 together. It's a linebacker. He was a 5-star. He went to another school. He was considering Alabama, and now he's not on the roster there. There's only a few guys who fit all of that criteria. But if you can't figure it out, check out Bama Online there. I think, look, Bama would be a player. He's a West Coast kid. Tosh Lupoy was all over him, and Bama was the clear leader for quite some time in that recruitment. And Blair Angulo covered him better than anybody. So if Blair's coming with some scoop on Bama Online with a West Coaster, Bama fans should listen. So if he is granted his release from said Pac-12 school, I do think Alabama becomes an immediate player. I don't know how it affects recruiting depending on his eligibility, but if there's a position where Bama could use a boost in recruiting, it's linebacker. So that alone, I think, boosts Alabama, period, in terms of affecting either class, playing right now or sitting out a year. Either way, that would be huge. I think it would lessen the true need for Nakobe Dean. I think Bama would still do everything it could to get him, but right now he seems like the most important recruit still on the board. And should this happen, maybe he drops all the way down to number 2 or something. But it seems like the timing of that is good for Alabama. Bama lost out on Christian Williams. It has lost out on other inside linebackers in this cycle. It does have Shane Lee committed, and holding on to him has become that much more important. And I think Bama will. He was another guy at the cookout. But Nakobe Dean right now is probably the top guy. Nakobe Dean may be the most important recruit on the board for Bama. I think Darnell Wright, Clay Webb, Daxton Hill, George Pickens, there's some other guys on that list. But, man, if Bama had their pick right now, I would be surprised if they wouldn't say, Nakobe Dean. So if you bring this kid in, maybe, that pressure eases a little bit. And that would be good for Alabama, certainly. And hey, maybe you get both of them because you're Alabama, right? But I don't think it would change a whole lot in terms of the targets overall and the numbers. I think Bama would still like to add a linebacker regardless of this prospects situation. But a good question. And again, check out Bama Online for a little bit more on that one. And then finally here, coming in via Laquan, actually two more here. We'll actually just stick to the final one from Laquan. If you were to pick a starting lineup based on Nick Saban players at Bama, what would that look like for today's game? So more recent players would probably have an advantage, especially on defense. Wow, Laquan, what a question. You know, an all-time Nick Saban team at Alabama is a wild question. I'm going to go off the top of my head. I'm going to forget some really good players. So if I do, just tweet us and tell me where I sucked and where I went wrong, and we'll retweet you at CABC Pod. All right, all-time Nick Saban starting lineup. I'm going to go very fast here as we wrap up our program today. Quarterback, that's already going to be a debate, right? Y'all are going to hate that. If we're talking for a college game, managing the game, combination of arm and all that, I'll go with the guy who's had the most success in the NFL under Nick. I'll go A.J. McCarron. I'll play it safe there. I think he fits the old style and the new style, and he's going to start this year for the first time at Buffalo. So we'll see how good A.J. is, but he's had the most success of any former Crimson Tide quarterback. He was a multi-year national champion at Alabama. Heck, he was, top 5 in the Heisman voting, for goodness sakes. Who else can say that besides preseason Tua Tagovailoa projections? But we all know there's a lot to be said there. So I'll go A.J. McCarron at quarterback. At running back, I get two, right? Starting lineup. Probably Derrick Henry as one, just by default. The other one, you talk about guys to choose from. I think if you're constructing an offense or you're thinking of the modern era, Derrick Henry as my downhill guy, and we need a space guy. I'd probably go T.J. Yeldon at this point, although Najee Harris, skill set wise, is just as intriguing, even though we hadn't seen him as much. But you can go with Damian Harris, Eddie Lacy, Mark Ingram, Kenyon Drake. Is going to have a long NFL career because of his versatility. So if you're thinking of the new age, Kenyon Drake's a little higher on the board than maybe some would think. Wide receiver, easy. I got a 3-receiver set: Julio, Amari, Calvin. Simple, no debate there. We're going tight end, probably O.J. Howard if we're thinking of the new age. O-line, give me Ryan Kelly at center. Give me Jonah Williams at one tackle. Cameron Robinson at the other tackle. Oh, man. At guard, let's see. I need a big bruiser, and then we'll get a more mobile guy. So for the big bruiser, give me TJ Fluker kicking inside the guard. For the other guard, give me another converted tackle. I'll go Andre Smith out of respect to the early days under Nick Saban. But, man, after this year, I'm going to put Alex Leatherwood on that list, and we may put Jedrick Wills on that list one day. No disrespect to Chance Warmack, Bradley Bozeman, Barrett Jones. My goodness. Hard to pick 5 linemen there for Alabama, but those are the 5 I roll with. Going over the D-line, defensive end, give me Raekwon Davis. He's kicking outside for this experiment because inside I'm going Deron Payne and I'm going John Allen. And then at the other defensive end, we're running a 4-3, by the way. We're running a 4-3. For the other defensive end, give me Terrell Lewis. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt at the other defensive end spot. 3 linebackers. This is probably the hardest one to do. For sure, C.J. Mosley, who I think is the best linebacker in the NFL right now. No disrespect to Luke Kuechly. Check out Twitter for that interaction. That was funny during the Hall of Fame game. Give me Reuben Foster. CJ in the middle, Reuben Foster on the weak side. Strong side backer. It's probably still Rolando McClain. I think a guy like Dante Hightower is really interesting if you're thinking of a guy who on third downs will come rush the passer, things like that. But if we're just talking about a base 4-3 defense, we'll go Rolando McClain at the strong side back, or the Sam there. And then secondary, gosh, this is hard too. At safety, Clinton Dix for sure. Minka Fitzpatrick slightly over Landon Collins. And then at corner, another hard one. In the Nick Saban era, and this will, you talk about a question that will change. In a year, this will be a different question, a different answer coming from me. I'll tell you that right now. But for now, at cornerback in the Saban era, give me Drake Kirkpatrick for his longevity, ability to play inside and out. And then we'll go with a newer guy on the other side. You know what? Let's go Marlon Humphrey. Let's go with the legacy, the Hoover kid, who's going to have a big year for the Baltimore Ravens this year. Let's go Marlon Humphrey for the other corner. But again, that question will have a different answer this time next year. Let's just say that. So, Laquan, ask it next year, too. We'll see what changes we made from the all Nick Saban team. Punter, J.K. Scott, kicker. Oh, gosh. You guys pick a kicker. Maybe it's one of these guys that Bama has on the roster right now. Snapper, long snapper, we'll go Carson Tinker. I don't know what else you want me to pick from, but those would be kind of my picks, Laquan. And that's a fun question to wrap up with. So we'll kind of cap it there for this Friday edition of Crimson and Blue Chips, our first Friday edition in quite some time. We thank you for listening. Again, working hard on getting on multiple platforms, but right now, YouTube is the place to be, so please subscribe. Check out our channel. We've got other shows on there too, supplemental content. We put up a Throwback Thursday interview with Devontae Smith when he was, before he was an Alabama championship game hero and Mississippi State game hero. We put that up as a bit of a flashback with some highlights from the Army All-American Bowl on there as well. So check that out. A lot of content coming on YouTube. And again, the audio content will be sorted out very, very soon. So thanks for listening, everybody. Have a great weekend. Football season officially here. We're going to talk so much camp, you'll get tired of it, beginning Monday with the next edition of Crimson and Blue Chips. God bless. Garcia out.